Hello comic fans, here's Earl Grey, cheers. I've read a couple of European crime comics the last couple of weeks, and I think crime as a genre is maybe almost as important for European comics as are superheroes for American comics. So here we have quite a variety of different takes on that genre, starting with the anthropomorphic blacksad, maybe the biggest book here of the bunch, collecting 5 European albums written by Diaz, Canales and drawn by Juanjo Guarnido. And that was obviously very important pull for me because he did, together with some different writer, the big India swindle. And I can't believe my eyes when I googled it before this video here to see which publisher has published this beautiful, fantastically written book, one of the best books that came around from Europe in the last years. Which publisher has published this in English, but it has not been published. But you can correct me in the comments if there is already an English publication, and I take everything. Blacksad is available by Dark Horse. I've seen it. So yeah, let's look into this book here. I was a bit hesitant about Blacksad because the hype was so big. I didn't know if I should buy the hype here, and I know that I was a bit and have been overfed with Disney animation style drawings, and Guarnido here, he worked as an animator for Disney, so you can see that, I guess, even if Disney wouldn't pull off here all the stuff that is in Blacksad. But after some pages, I was just lost here in these beautiful pages, in these perspectives, in the highly detailed art, and the characters are maybe a bit cliché when he uses certain animals to characterize certain types of persons and so on. But it's just great. I mean, it's a fun for the eyes and for your brain a bit as well, since the stories are well mapped out, planned out, written stories. No comparison, actually, to this book here, which is just superb. Literature in picture form. I mean, this is literature as well, but just saying. So, this is really fun ride. I'm just 3 albums in. I've read 3 albums of the 5 here. Enjoyed each of them. Look at this guy here. And yeah, the next page was really worth the whole book alone, but I won't show you this to you. The second story about some racist faction, the Arctic Front or something like this, in which these dudes here with the white fur and white feathers and whatever, they think they are more worth than the others. So it's a comic about racism in the 50s, and yeah, you wish that this kind of topic would be something of the past, but which is obviously not the case. And our main guy here, Blacksad, like his John Blacksad, this private detective here, is obviously a black one, so he is on one side of society here. And the whole story here that evolves out of this premise is very clever, very not Disney, very hardcore, very emotional. Disney is emotional, but not, not the easy way of Disney kitsch here. This is a beautiful collection of these stories, and so far, but I don't believe that the 2 last albums in that collection will let me down. So yeah, animation maybe as a key or segue to this here, because the creator Danier is actually more well known under, oh come on, focus, his name, real name, Dan Yippes, and he did several DuckTales. He's a pretty prominent and famous and I said important duck artist. Unfortunately, Dan Yippes or Danier wanted too much with his story on just too few pages. So we are introduced to characters that aren't really introduced. They sometimes a good part of the story is cramped in some speech bubbles or exposition texts, and you haven't seen it coming because it wasn't coming from nowhere. The story here is really convoluted, cramped, and leaves you with many question marks above your head, despite the really cool visuals, as you can see here. I mean, I don't know if this is the only album by havank. Analog Comics showed the same comic in a Finnish version, so maybe it was no accident that this is exactly the same comic as he showed, and maybe Dan Yippes never could produce more albums. I think when he felt less pressure to put everything in one album, it would have been a better comic. Maybe a series of 5 comics. I feel really here's story material for 5 comics. But I don't mean this in a flattering way, story-wise. Talking about stories are not so important, but the art is obviously exciting. And this came as no surprise to me. Valhardi by Jean Dossy and jijé. Jijé is, yeah, sometimes it's really good when the shelves here are close at hand. He is very close to my heart because of these Western comics here with Jerry Spring. And as you can see here, he developed to a master of black and white. These comics here are great. I talked about him in some video. Go find it. I don't have the number in mind. So I wanted to know about the beginnings of Mr. Jijé. And as you can see here by the years, this book here collects stories from 1941 to 1946. So a big part of the chunk here was created and printed and published under very difficult circumstances when the Germans occupied Belgium. And here's the writer, Jean Dossy. And that's jijé in a very blurry photograph, but here even a game with a valhardi motif from the cover here. So it was quite a popular series, published on a weekly basis in Spirou. Maybe the most important signal was that valhardi still is there in Spirou. to have some sense of normality in crazy times and in very bad times. So here we have some of the earliest drawings of Jijé. I mean, he drew Spirou as well, the main series, but here we have Valhardi, that guy here. He's a detective. His most prominent feature is that he has very firm handshake. He squeezes almost the life of the hand that is given to him in a friendly way. Yeah, but so yeah, you can see it's maybe, at least in these stories, he's not a very well fleshed out character. The cartooning here I really like. Even more, you can see Jijé's drawing talent developing over these few years here. There's not so much, I mean, sometimes you have a bit, or they had here the problem to get proper originals to print it. But overall, I think the reproduction quality of these comics are really good. And you can see that he is experimenting more and more with blacks. The stories are a bit more well-rounded, not so arbitrary like in the beginning. You have one side, they are in the city, and then suddenly they are in the desert with no real reason. Stories go nowhere, and sometimes it's finished and the good ones, Valhardi and his friends, have won. But here you can see good art, fantastic art, some snappy dialogues. I can only guess, because the worst thing here in this edition is the translation. This here is atrocious. The translation is full of mistakes, errors, modern words when old words are more would be fitting. A lot of two-word sentences which really don't make any kind of sense in German. At least they sound horrible. I mean, maybe in the French original there were some similar constructions. I thought this in the beginning, but then mistakes come to mistake, and so I think really the translation here, the German translation of this book here, is not good. And I really hope that for the second volume they do a better job. I am a bit hesitant now to get the next volumes, and I don't know if it. The next one is Eddie Pape, who did the drawings for the further Valhardis, and he's not so close to my heart as an artist. I mean, his comics are good, but maybe, however. So the last comic series I want to talk about today is not this one here, Agent 327, but this one, Agent 421. Both series are obviously spoofs of James Bond. This one here by Martin Lodewijk, I've talked about this series earlier. Obviously this has been pretty consistent on the cartoony side, a very funny and highly enjoyable series, I feel. While Eric Maltaite's version of a James Bond spoof has really undergone development and evolution, as you can see here. It's always the same character that you see here, but this change here is drastically, and there you have even more a serious feel of that main character. But it was always the same artist and the same writer, Stefan Desberg, who wrote stories together or for Will Maltaite, Eric Maltaite's father. Here we have somewhere, that's Will Maltaite, one of the greatest European artists, in my opinion, and that's Eric. And he had obviously big shoes to fill with his series, and this is difficult, as you can imagine. And so he had, it was maybe not really a help for him to have this famous father. But he made his way, and lots of very good comics came out of his pen afterwards. And here you can witness him growing as an artist. This is great. The stories are funny and making, yeah, as you can imagine, you can make a lot of good jokes about James Bond because, yeah, it's very easy to make fun of James Bond. I really like volumes 2 and mostly volume 3 a bit more than volume 1 because now the adventures became more real and the characters are more than just a vehicle to tell jokes, but to really tell us gripping adventures in very realistic settings, and it's just a joy to see the art becoming better, improving with each volume in exotic sceneries. So it's still a bit like James Bond, and the series never lost this, its origins in being a James Bond spoof totally, but it became a beast of its own, an entertaining series that was discontinued when they were the best. So the third volume really contains the most adult, well-made stories of the bunch here. In each volume, here you have 4 albums collected. But really, I have to say that some stuff is very hard to swallow. That this should have been published in a kids magazine. I mean, there's one particular story. The last album of 421 is The Threshold of Karlov, and what's meant by that is that this threshold is some border you pass when you leave all humanity behind. And it boggles my mind how this story here, which really gives you the chills, has ever found its way into a magazine for teenagers. Basically, I guess that was the main target audience. But you see this guy here entering a house of this boy here, and then he tells his dad, "Hey, there's some guy following me," and then this guy shoots the father in front of the eyes of the kid. Then he spills some petrol on the floor, takes the teddy bear from the kid because he wants to give this teddy his own son afterwards, and then instead of for the teddy he gives him a lighter, and there's some gas. He opened up some bottle with this gas, and then he rides away and says, "Okay, you always can count on the curiosity of children." And in the back you see that the house explodes because he did just what this guy here expected, and obviously he is beyond this threshold of Karlov. I don't know. I couldn't find anything real like a psychological term or something like this that is called threshold of Karlov. I guess it's just a homage to Boris Karloff in some way. Anyhow, and what ensues here is just a manhunt by 421 and his girlfriend to hunt down this evil character. And he, spoilers, he got a he will be killed in the end. It's more an execution. And it's very dry and very, gripping in a way, but it lost almost his cartoony charm. That doesn't mean it's a bad comic, not at all, really a good comic. But this series here changed within some albums very drastically. And yeah, thought I tell you about my journeys through European crime comics, and that's all for now. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.